Um,
We're just going to give it a few seconds while I see our number of participants go up. We had a very good response to tonight's talk, so welcome to everyone coming in. I see it slowly getting up there. All right. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Good evening. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Monacan Nation, the traditional custodians of the land we are on today, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. My name is Kristen Chiacha, and I'm the Executive Director and Chief Curator of Second Street Gallery. We're a 501c3 nonprofit art space located just off the downtown mall in Charlottesville, Virginia. Second Street Gallery is currently in the middle of our 47th year of programming. And although this year has been incredibly challenging and looks very different from years past, we are so thrilled that we're able to hold exhibitions and welcome visitors safely and in person by appointments to the gallery. Our current exhibition, Bearing Witness, stands in solidarity with the ongoing and urgent Black Lives Matter movement. This exhibition captures moments of collective action and mourns the excessive violence against Black people in America. The title, Bearing Witness, reflects on Maya Angelou's statement, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." Working simultaneously as fine art and journalism, the photographs bear witness to both trauma and joy, to the fight against police brutality and systemic racism, and to the persistent struggle to remove Confederate symbols in Charlottesville and Richmond, Virginia. Bearing Witness also features protest signs from the Black Youth Action Committee, as well as an interactive element inviting the community to process their thoughts in writing, created by Destiny Wright, an artist, activist, and creator of the Solidarity Cards Project. The exhibition Bearing Witness was made possible in part by a generous donation from the fund at CACF, and we thank them. So tonight I have the pleasure of being joined by the 5 photographers exhibiting their work in the show: Ézé Amos, Ty Hilton, Marley Nichelle, Derrick J. Waller, and Sandy Williams IV. I'm also honored to welcome tonight's moderator, Dr. Andrea Douglas, Executive Director of the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. Dr. Andrea Douglas holds an MA and PhD in art history from the University of Virginia and an MBA in arts management and finance from Binghamton University, New York. She has also participated in the Getty's Leadership Institute. Douglas was curator of collections and exhibitions and curator of contemporary art at the University of Virginia Art Museum from 2004 to 2010. She has been a chair of the city's Place Design Task Force, a member of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Race and Monuments, the University of Virginia's President's Commission on Slavery at the University, where she sat on their Monument and Community Outreach Committee. Dr. Douglas presently sits on Monticello's Advisory Committee on African American Affairs and was recently appointed co-chair of the next President's Commission, which will explore UVA's post-emancipation history. She sits on the board of the Miller School of Albemarle and on the Emily Couric Leadership Forum Board. So I'll now hand the discussion over to Dr. Douglas and our 5 panelists. And if there's time at the end of the session, we'd like to take questions from the audience. So please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do the best to address them. Tonight's talk is also being recorded, and we plan on sharing that over the next couple of days on our website. So thank you, and I'll now turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. I'm very excited to have you be having this conversation. Thank you so much for the invitation. These are subjects that I have thought about and been engaged in for a very long time. So the opportunity to talk to people who are making work about it, Kristen, is really, for me, a way of engaging with my own thinking about monuments and race and all manner of protest, as well as to hear from others who are deeply embedded in it through their work. So thanks so much. I'm gonna first introduce the artist, and then we'll get into some questions. And what I'm reading is their by way of introduction, is their sort of statements that are part of the exhibition. But in looking at them, there are some particular things that I want to highlight too, in terms of what that language says that might guide some of what we're talking about today. So first, we're going to start with Ézé Amos, documentary photographer and photojournalist. Ézé Amos originally trained in the sciences at the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. After embracing his passion for fine art and then photography, Ézé emigrated to Charlottesville in 2008, where he now captures the unique spirit and energy of our city. His many photo projects have included Seville People Every Day, Seville Porch Portraits, and Inside Out, This Is What Community Looks Like. Driven to tell the true stories of Charlottesville and neighboring communities, Ézé is also an affiliate photographer with the New York Times and Getty Images. His work has been published by the New York Times, Getty Images, and a wide range of other international news agencies. Ézé is always on the move, documenting resistance efforts on the ground and bringing out the people in the beauty in people around him. Next, Ty Hilton is based in Richmond. According to Hilton, I started my photography journey in 2008, inspired by Gordon Parks, who made me want to travel and bring photos to the masses. I've been into taking photos since I was a child, using everything from an instant camera to a DSLR. I love taking the viewer on a journey into what I see. Photography is my escape, and I am the happiest and most relaxed when I have a camera in my hands. Anyone can take a photo, but I hope the viewer sees my vision and appreciates my originality. Next is Marley Nichelle. I'm a photojournalist from Chapapee. How do you say Chapapee, Marley? We're gonna have to talk about that in a minute. South Carolina, currently based in Charlottesville. According to Marley, photography has always been therapeutic for me. I love the idea of making images look exactly how I see them, through light, love, and energy. As a Black person, seeing all races and cultures come together, standing for Black and Brown lives in Charlottesville and Richmond, has been so empowering. I hope I can help change the world through photography and show people that I see what I see behind my lens. It's an honor to have a gift in something that helps amplify Black and Brown stories and voices. I have nothing to lose but my chains. Derrick Waller. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Virginia and have spent my whole life in this great state, currently residing in Charlottesville. My daily grind is pharmaceutical research, but my expressive outlet is photography, where I find great joy in documenting candid moments of everyday life. My appreciation of photography started at an early age, but mainly as a looker and not a taker. It wasn't until the unexpected loss of my mother that I made the decision to stop thinking about picking up a camera and actually do it. This interest quickly became a passion, and now I feel like I'm missing out on moments if I'm not documenting them. And then finally, Sandy Williams IV. I'm an artist and filmmaker working in sculpture, cinema, performance, painting, photography, text, and the public, currently based in New York City and Richmond. I graduated from the University of Virginia with my BFA and from VCUA Arts, sorry. I don't know why I keep wanting to put that A in there, with an MFA in sculpture and extended media. My work is about the persistence of memory, the body, and resistance. Through my practice, I perform acts of persistence as a dynamic engagement with historical, in pursuit of the threads that connect our diasporic origin stories to both our official record and currency crisis. This work gives agency to me and to the audience to actively participate in the creation of future mythologies and to work towards the emancipation of our public spaces. I'm interested in the way time can be passed down. So thank you all for joining us. And I want to add that the pronouns used by our panelists is the pronoun he. Um, so I read those in almost in completion, primarily because I wanted the audience to hear the voice of the artist. And primarily because it felt to me like there were so many moments in each of these statements that kind of linked each of these artists and their practice and their purpose together. So let me first ask the question that everyone wants to know. Who has seen the show, who has seen some of the images. And I'm gonna ask this for everyone because much of the work that we're looking at tonight, although some of it is in Charlottesville, some of it is also in Richmond. So, and the work is is in response to events. So Sandy, tell me, you talk about the Unite the Right rally. Where were you and how did you come to start producing this work?
So the day of the Unite the Right rally, I was in Charlottesville that morning. Like there were the events that had taken place the night before on the lawn of UVA. And so I was walking to work the next day, the day the rally was supposed to happen, and kind of looking around, looking at the way the things had been blocked off. They had just the thin kind of gating around the Lee Monument, and a truck of young men with Confederate flags flying behind it, all stopped and threw Nazi salutes at me. And in that moment, I was like, I don't need to be here. I don't know what's about to happen, but they're already picking me out. So that day I left for Richmond. I was already supposed to be starting grad school at VCU. And so I'd already had an apartment. I was just working my last few days in Charlottesville. So that's the day that I made that move. But that moment stayed with me, I still had friends here, Kevin, my professor, Kevin Everson, who he was still sending me pictures, so I still felt very much in Charlottesville while I was in Richmond. And I left that one Lee monument for a whole Monument Avenue. So going into my grad studies, it was heavy on my mind in what do these sculptures, these monuments mean? What do they do? How do they act in our public spaces? And how do we address them as forward thinkers trying to work for a sort of progress in restorative justice and in a future that isn't so racist, I guess.
And Ty, how about you? Because you're in Richmond. So how did you come to make your images? What was that moment how did you get to these pictures?
Well, the day after the initial riots happened, after the murder of George Floyd, I have a lot of photographer friends in Richmond, and a lot of them called me and texted me, and it's like, hey, Ty, you have to get out here to see this Jeb Stuart statue, which is also on my shirt after the vandalism that happened. You have to get out here and see this Lee Monument. And for years, we've always been told that these Confederate statues, these people that have been glorified on these statues are just heroes. But, being a Black person in America, just looking at what they stood for and the slavery and the things of that nature, I never understood why they were looked at as heroes. And you can go to Germany and Hitler isn't glorified. People who did horrific things in those different countries are not glorified the way we glorify these statues here in Virginia. And to see or to capture what happened after those riots, it was very different, and it was something I felt like that had to be captured. I feel like that this moment in time right now is something that's going to be in history books. I feel like all the artists that are being represented now, our work will be something that will be memorialized and it will be in history books.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get back to that point because I do have a question about that as well. Marley, how about you? How did you get to your pictures? What was the happenstance for that?
So I just like the same with Ty, like after the all of the uprisings, after Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's death, um, I just rode out to Richmond one day and was like, I'm gonna go support, everybody in Richmond. And I was just like, I'm gonna take my camera. So I was actually out there as an activist as well, but just to show support. But I think to me, like what really amazed me the most is that Richmond, out of all of the places on the East Coast, Richmond has been really standing strong, like in solidarity. And I felt like for me, that was empowering. I mean, you see it on TV, but to be in that moment and like experience so many different moments in Richmond with so many of their protests, it was completely empowering for me because you don't get to like, I've never seen like anything like this or witnessed anything like this. And that's what made me stay in Richmond. The momentum, 30 days. Like I marched with Richmond for 30 days on the grounds, just capturing moments that I felt like for me was very empowering. And I gotta say, like for Richmond to be the home of the Confederacy, like they did a great job at standing their grounds and reclaiming their city because it was the momentum, everything, even down to them taking down statues. It was just for me, it was just liberating to be able to take these pictures. Cause I mean, these things could be kept for years. Like these pictures will never go away. And it's dope that we all as creators and photographers get to tell our story the way we see it through our lens.
Right. And Derrick, how about you? How did you come to your pictures?
So, I've always been, I don't know, led by just capturing moments in general. That's kind of my love for photography is based in just, the thing with a camera is no matter who, you can have two photographers taking the same photo or taking a photo of the same thing, but something's going to be different. It's going to be unique. And those moments will never be documented the same way ever again. So this has like always been sort of, my passion with photography is this style of work. But to be honest with you, the killing of George Floyd for me was emotional, and it lit a fire in me of anger pretty much after watching that video. So I felt like I had to go out. I had to, like Marley said, tell my story with the camera. I feel that in seeing the photographers that I saw documenting, some of these events, there's two categories of people. There are the, photographers that were shooting the protests, but there were also, I think Marley mentioned this too, people that were protesting that happened to be a photographer. And I think I was the latter. I was out there because I wanted to be out there. I wanted to feel that energy. I wanted a way to sort of express my feelings and my anger and be around people that felt the same way. I just happened to have a camera with me. And I too wanted to, tell my story the way that I wanted to tell it. Especially as we got further along in some of the, the protests continued going, you were seeing the media sort of documenting them in a negative way. And that's not the experience that I had. So I was like, these images that we are producing and taking are we're able to, to build our narrative the way we want to build it.
Right, right. And Ézé, let's hear from you. How did you come to your pictures?
Yeah, I'm going to take it back a little bit. This form of documentation for me started about 5 years ago, and it was something I stumbled upon the first protest at the Lee statue back in Charlottesville. That was back in 2016, I think, and that was when all of this started for me, and right there and then I felt the importance of being there or showing up and telling the story of my community. I have a little girl. I'm raising a daughter in that community, and I feel it's very important for us locals to be able to tell the story of our community, as against photographers coming from, the big names, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, coming to tell their narrative or bringing their view of what they see and telling the rest of the world. I just felt it was very important for me to be able to, to step up and do that. And so that was what actually got me into all of this. And I've just been in the struggle. I consider myself, yes, a photojournalist, but I often tell folks when they ask me, where I stand and what my idea is, I'm like, first off, I'm Black, so you know where I stand on this whole movement and stuff. So that should give you an idea of like where I stand and what got me into the struggle. This is my struggle also. As much as I try to be, as neutral as possible to tell the story from a non-biased point of view, I'm still somewhat biased and stuff, and that is what brought me into this, and that's why I've been in this, documenting protests, struggles, and every form of resistance that have been cropping up, here in Charlottesville and in Richmond, and yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of your Lee statue photos, or when Wes and Zai were down at the Lee statue being faced off by these flaggers, that let a lot of us know at home, not knowing that this was going on, that this was happening. It was the very next day that we saw some of these photographs, and we're like, wow, okay, this is something quite different. I want to read a statement that part of a statement that Sandy wrote in an artist statement about his objects, about his wax objects. And what he wrote was, I'm interested in visualizing change in building monuments, able to keep a living record of activity. By circulating miniature wax versions of existing monuments, people are giving agency over these forms that are normally immobile and until recently were legally untouchable. Sandy, when you wrote that, can you expound a little bit on that in relationship particularly to the objects that you have in the exhibition?
Absolutely. So the Wax Monument series, like I was kind of saying, it started in 2017 after the Unite the Right rally. And it started, I was 3D scanning different monuments, shrinking them down, making molds out of them, making these candles, and then distributing them. And I guess just to speak to that agency, kind of what we see happened with the Lee Monument, that's the same sort of like tactile agency that I wanted to distribute as like a commonality, like most of these monuments before, when I was taking these photographs of my candles melting in them, are super untouchable. Like the Jefferson statue on the lawn has 24/7 guards next to it. The Lincoln Memorial, they told me I had to be like 100 yards away from the actual memorial to do anything. They actually told me I'm not allowed to even light a candle while standing on the marble, because it's considered a demonstration and they would have to arrest me if I'm demonstrating on that monument. The Lee was the same way, where it was just this untouchable thing. I did a performance last year where I just got permission to clean a monument there's like a little Statue of Liberty in Richmond. And I had to get permission from the police department, from the Parks and Recs department, from the council that manages the park. And even still, people were like, every day somebody came and like told me I didn't have a right to be there, to be touching that thing, to be like wiping off that patina they were calling history. And so like, that's kind of what I wanted to do with these candles, was like take the form of the monument and give people the agency to enact however, to mold that thing, to mold its future, I suppose. And That's like the agency that was burst open when all the uprisings started, and people just started taking that power, you know, like tagging the monuments, the beautiful photographs everybody's taken, documenting that slow accumulation of like new history on the surface of those things. That's the kind of like emancipation that I was seeing, I wanted to happen, and I was noticing actually didn't exist in the public spaces that surround us.
So Marley, that brings me to a question for you, because you talked about being an activist, walking, both you and Derrick talked about seeing yourselves as activists and documenting your experience as you were in that space. And so I wanted to ask about this notion of agency that Sandy talks about, and the sort of removing the distance between those sort of venerated objects through the work. And here you both are on the street taking pictures. How do you think your pictures, and even Ézé too, how do your pictures then do similar kinds of work? Or in your mind, do they do that similar kind of work in terms of engaging an audience with what you're experiencing and then limiting that distance between there?
For me, yes, I feel like, because when I just actually did a small documentary with SCNR, and they dropped the video, and I went to go watch the video on YouTube, and I was reading a lot of the comments on the video, and like when Sandy brought up what he was saying, like the comments were like kind of similar to his, you know, experience with his, you know, work. Like they were saying, like, I sounded as if I was a radical. I sounded as if, you know, like I was trying to push the Democrat like agenda. It was so weird to me, because it was like, that's not what it was for me. Like those pictures are what I saw as an activist that empowered me. Like when Ézé was like, when people ask what side are we on, like what side would I be on? Like I'm Black, you know what I'm saying? Like, so the pictures that I take, like they aren't just from a lens of like empowerment. There as an activist, it's like me telling a story from like my narrative, from my experiences. And that's why, like, and even with the pictures that I chose, like I wanted to choose those pictures of like liberation, like the Christopher Columbus picture, the picture of the Confederate flag burning. It's like you have to be very, you know, careful with certain things like when you're taking pictures. So like when I was taking a lot of my pictures, I love the fact that I saw, you know, liberation. And that's, as an activist, I wanted, that's how I was feeling, you know what I'm saying? Like the way people felt, I saw that in my photos because I felt that same way. So when you see the Daughters of Confederacy photo, I actually named it. I didn't know what to name it. So when I looked at the picture, it looked a little apocalypse to me. So I was like, man, this looked like a reclaim apocalypse. Like even into how like I describe my photos, like it's not just from a photographer's point of view or a creative point of view, but what I feel. Like when I saw these monuments, I felt good. It felt good to be Black. It was literally what a time to be alive for me. Like that's how I felt. Like, and that's how I wanted my photos to be in doing this, because you do get a lot of people who give you a lot of negative backlash, because like people were calling me, like they were saying like I'm a journalist, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a journalist, but I'm my own journalist. I mean, anybody can be a journalist. Anybody can tell their story. I mean, anybody can take a phone and take a picture of something and write a story about it. You know what I'm saying? That's our story. Like, and I didn't want people to feel like I was promoting a political party, or it's like, no, like these are my natural, authentic stories as an activist. Like I'm hurt, like being Black in America is very oppressing right now. It's hard. It's like, even in photography, for Black photographers, it's just hard for us to get these stories out. We're always just so oppressed when it comes, like I've been out on the grounds for like months, and all I see is white photographers, you know what I'm saying? So the people that I hold on to are the Black photographers. I stay to those Black photographers. That's my safe space. They are my safe space. You know, like I feel like when I see them and we're all capturing these moments, it's scary sometimes, but you don't want to push or make it seem like, you know, like we have an agenda. Like we just want to tell our reality. Like this is our story. Like dude can't even go and light a candle, you know, without it being considered a movement, or like, it's like, that's wild, you know, like that shouldn't even be something that we should even have to go through as creatives. Like, but I just feel like with all, like with that and everything with my activism and being a photographer, sometimes I have to remember as well, like I have to separate both for safety reasons. It's a lot. So like getting like all of these runarounds from different people, it's a lot, you know, when you're a photographer, especially when you Black, because you don't know who to go to, you don't know who to talk to, and then you got to get all of these okays just to get this done and to get that done. And sometimes it becomes very, very stressful, especially for Black photographers. So I totally get what Sandy coming from with his experience.
Mhm, mhm. Derrick, how about you? How about you being on the street like that? Or do you have a similar sentiment about this sort of notion of agency, or do you see that differently?
No, totally agree. I totally agree. You know, I think I don't know if I'm always thinking about that when I'm there. I think, you know, I'm capturing what I see and what I guess speaks to me. I think the other thing that I want people to take away from the things that I have, you know, shared, or the you know, my photographs is, don't just get lost in the art. As they mentioned it, we are Black. These are real stories that we are living each and every day. Like this is not just, you know, we're not. I'll speak for myself. I'm not just taking photos, you know, for the art, or to show it. I mean, this is real life for people, and you know, it's important not to get lost in, you know, a beautiful image. You know, what I don't want to happen from these images that we've taken and we've sharing is for nothing to change. I mean, the ultimate goal of sharing this work, and you know, is for there to be real change for, you know, Black and brown lives living in this country. So you know, as I'm shooting these photos, you know, again, it's not just about the photo. It's about, you know, we as Black people, what we have to live and do and deal with on a day-to-day basis. And you know, the art should be celebrated, but also the people that are actually organizing these events and leading these events. You know, make sure that you know, the Zais of the world and the Wesses of the world, you know, get their due, and that we're supporting these organizations that are doing this work on a day-to-day basis. So you know, I hope people take away that from the art. It's not just art. This is real life for people.
Yeah, and that's a interesting perspective. Ty, let me ask you a question, because you're the Richmond native, and I think also this notion of the rarefication of these objects. You know, we live with in Charlottesville, you know, 5 statues, and in one way or another, our statues were. They weren't meant to be as rarefied. I mean, they're plunked down in these parks. Certainly you can't get too close to them, but they were really meant to be part of a community building and articulate a sense of value. But Ty, these monuments in Richmond feel a little different than to me in some ways. And I think the kinds of images that you've included in the exhibition are really about the retaking of those monuments. When you're, for instance, looking at the one from above that is about all of the tagging and whatever. Tell me about that part, that retaking of those monuments.
Yeah, like Monument Avenue has always been thought of a place that was predominantly white. It almost made me feel like, as a Black man living in Richmond, that's an area where we were not welcome whatsoever. It's like, don't cross foot on Monument Avenue or you'd be looked at funny. People would ask you, what are you doing here? Even with me taking pictures. I remember when I first started photography, I I was practicing one time and I was out on Monument Avenue just taking photos. Someone asked me, why are you out here? What are you doing? Like, what are you about to do to the monument? I mean, it's sad to say, but that's just a commonplace being Black in America. You get narrowed down to you have to be doing something wrong when you're just taking photos. But with the monuments and the vandalization that happened to them, like Marley said, I was proud of that. I felt like you said, it was we were taking back what was rightfully ours, and Monument Avenue was where it started at. Again, these statues with Robert Lee, Jeb Stewart, I forget the other ones that's there. It's so many, but the way that we came in and we just took it over, and especially with the one of Jeb Stewart that's from the aerial, if you look, you can see a lot of different messages that are on that statue. And a lot of people, it was a lot of reflection. A lot of people were writing things. There was messages on that statue that you can see in that picture. People memorializing their friends or family members that may have been victims of police brutality. Monument Avenue, I feel like, was the epicenter for taking back what I feel like was rightfully ours.
Mm-hmm. So Ernest Withers, 1960s photojournalist, his images are, his iconic images largely are images of the 68 sanitation workers strike. And at the time that he was taking these images, he was a documentarian. He was a photojournalist. He was trying to engage with the time and the moment. And he talks about in one of his descriptions of the images that he took, for instance, in Little Rock, you know, being caught in a melee where the cops were beating on him, but the most important thing to him was to capture that moment at that time so that he could show that specific moment, right? And so I want to talk about this idea of immediacy. How are you all arriving at these images? How are you articulating in your mind? What are the mechanisms that you're using to give those of us who are not there some sense of the quality of that moment? Anybody?
Hey, sorry, excuse me here. I'd like to tackle that question. I think for me personally, I think all of this is all the, you know, all what I kind of, you know, I've just been enjoying what everybody has been saying. I just want to say one thing about, you know, what brings me, how I arrive, you know, at some of the stuff that I capture. Photography for me, documenting all this stuff, being a photojournalist is my form of protest. It's the only form of protest that I know. It's the only way that I can really articulate myself or say something. I'm not very good at, you know, writing stories or telling it, putting pen on paper and just, you know, trying to like say something, but seeing it and trying to bring that the way I see it to my audience or whoever's following me or whoever's looking or whoever cares to want to see the photos is the way I you know, I tell them how I feel. It's the way I show up. I think it's about bearing witness for me personally. It's about being there and being able to tell the story of, you know, what is going on and being able to not just tell it, but, you know, have the story. You know, you look at the photos and you can draw your own conclusion based on what you're seeing. You can make your story from it. Probably might not even be the story I'm trying to tell, but you can run with something that you would be able to, you can make something out of it. And for me, most times when I'm photographing, that is what's, you know, I have in the back of my mind, like, what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to say? Am I representing this folks' rights? Or am I just bringing my own bias into it and just telling my own story? It's very, very important that I don't, you know, I mean, it's very, like I said earlier, it's really hard to remove myself and my own biases and all of my baggages from my photos. You know, as you can evidently see, all my photos are black and white. It's my bias. That's what I bring to it. I don't care how colorful it wants to be. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to subject it to being black and white. That is me coming through. but but above that, and and large, bigger than that is the story beneath what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to put across, or points the viewers to see. I'm trying to make them hear the sounds, hear the shouts, hear the cries, see the movements, actually feel the emotions. And that is that is how I present, and that is how I go about, or how I try to present all of this and some of the stuff that I see and witness out there. So basically, in a nutshell, like I said, it's just me bearing witness and me just being an activist. Even though most of the time I go out, I'm being commissioned by some media house or whatever. I do the job, I send it to them, but yet beneath that, I'm there representing Ézé, the Ézé that wants to tell a story of what he's seeing, the Ézé that feels the same pain those folks are feeling, and I feel that's what I try to do, just try to bring that, and get the people to see what I see and feel what I feel and hear what I've heard through these photos as much as I can.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that's one of the powerful things about Ézé's photos, that I've always seen that since I've sort of followed his journey, is if you're not there, you still feel like you were there. Like, it's really clear in an emotional, it does something emotionally to you when you're just absolutely, when you're viewing his photos. It's like like he mentioned, you even if you're not there, it's so vivid that you are creating your own story about, I feel like I was there. And I think that's the power of what we're doing, what we're all doing.
I mean, I agree. I see some of the same things in everybody's photos. Like, when I look at, Ézé's photos, especially, just looking at it, like, I think it's a protest picture. It looks like somebody was shouting out. I can hear those cries, and just sitting there looking at it, I try not to get lost in it, but it almost feels like I'm there. So that's very powerful. Yeah.
And I feel like to piggyback from what Ézé said as well, is like, taking pictures is his form of protesting. Like, I think in so many words, that's what I was trying to say to when it came to like my pictures. Like, that's my form of protest. And so when you see me taking certain pictures, like, and especially of like the different like things that I saw in Richmond, especially on Monument Avenue, just driving around all of like the historical areas of Richmond, like from Monument even down to the museums, like whether anything that was of Confederacy, was just like seeing these moments. It kind of put me like, okay, I'm not from Virginia. I'm from South Carolina, and Andrea is actually Choppy, is how you say it.
Thank you.
It's Choppy. And so with me coming to Charlottesville 5 years ago, I come from a predominantly Black community. So me living here and existing here now, it was kind of hard trying to adjust. It's like a culture shock almost for me. Like, I lost my Geechee act. Well, I didn't lose it, but I had to become accustomed to a different way of talking and speaking, because people would say that my accent and everything. So me knowing all of this and my experience in Charlottesville with itself and in this community, like, I wanted to, when I got into photography a year ago and I picked up the camera, like, I've always was into photography. I just never really took it seriously. But like a year ago, I was like, this is what I want to do. What do I want to do with my camera? And that's when I said, I just want to tell stories. Like, and Ézé kind of inspired me in a lot of ways to do that, because like you see his, like y'all said, like when you see his pictures, it's like you're actually there, like his eye for it. It gives you that story, and it's like you feel it. So I felt like, man, like I want to be able to take pictures and tell stories to people back home, because they don't understand my experience here. They don't see like exactly what's going on here. Like, even when 8/12 happened, like people were up here back home calling me like, are you okay? Like, is like they see what and I didn't even know like this was national, news at the time. Like, I didn't know people across the world could see it. So after 8/12 happened and seeing that with the media and knowing how media is a lot, it's dope to have genuine Black photographers on the grounds, and like just Black photographers in general. These are our experiences. This is our reality. nobody white can tell that story like we can. So when you look at all of our pictures, it's like, man, like nobody white is telling this story. It's all of these photographers are Black. No white photographer is telling the story for us. So I feel like when I go out, my job as a photographer in protesting and telling stories is to tell stories, not just for people in my community in Charlottesville, but for people back home who don't live here, who worry about me on a day-to-day basis, out here on the front line, sacrificing my body, you know, to tell them this is what is authentically going on.
Yeah, and just to like to piggyback off that, I agree that I think the urgency in a lot of ways for me always drives the moment and like the production that needs to happen. And I feel like I can see that in everyone else's work too. You know, I feel like as keen cultural observers, we just understood this was a historical moment. You know, these things happening, like you can't show up tomorrow. We gotta get out there today because like things are changing so rapidly. Like I love Ty's image of the Lee after, like with just a few marks on it. You know, it's like this one here. Yes, it's only got a few, and the Lee will never look like that again. You know, I stay right across the street from it. It's like it's so far gone, and the rest of the monument pictures, you know, like those statues are now removed. You know, like the landscape has changed, and so like these are historical documents that like we can't go get it now. And so like that urgency, I think, drove all of our instincts to like, we got to get outside.
Right.
And I just want to say real quick. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just really just want to say this because I might not get the chance to say it. Please just ignore my little friend making the sound there. But I just wanted to say that it's so I just feel so happy. I'm so grateful that for the first time since I've been doing this, I feel so honored and I feel so like extremely happy that I'm, you know, in this space with Black photographers, Black artists, Black activists. I've been out there doing this thing, you know, like I said, you know, for a minute. It's been years now, and I'm out there doing it, documenting those things. But whenever I look around, there's just like one or two of my kind. That's not to say there are no Black photographers out there, but you know, it's just hard to give them, or for them to get their voice, or for them to get the platform to be able to show their work. So I'm really grateful that, you know, finally there's this platform where, you know, Black photographers, talented people, you know, you guys are awesome, and I'm just happy that finally, you know, you all can tell your stories. You all can actually, you know, step into this space and, you know, and tell your story and have people listen and people see what you have to say. Not to take away from some of white, friends who are very talented photographers. But it's very important that, you know, this story is told by those who are also feeling it. I would just make one quick point. When the Klans, KKK, the Klans came to town, I remember the police chief advised that everybody stay, you know, like we all stay at home. I was interviewed by someone on NPR, I think it's Sandy Houseman, and she was asking me, so why are you risking your life going out? Why don't you just stay home? And I told her the exact thing I just said earlier, that if I don't go out there, I know it's risky, I know it's the Klan, for God's sake, I should be scared. But if I don't go out there, then who's gonna tell the story? You know, who's gonna tell the story of this community? You know, I know what this community is like from my own perspective, from, you know, the perspective of a Black person. I want to go out there and tell that story. I don't want to leave it to someone else to tell it for me. They're very good. I'm not taking anything away from them. They're good. But being able to tell our own story, being able to bear witness to our own pain and that of our, you know, people that we identify with, there's just something about that. And it's, you know, you can tell, you can see it in the images some of these people, some of, you know, you guys are capturing, and the type of works you guys are pushing out. You can feel the emotion, you can feel the pain, you can feel all of that and the struggle. And I just wanted to say that, and that I really appreciate you guys and really feel honored to be in this space with you all.
Yeah, you all are making my job really hard. I have look at all my paper, and you keep answering the questions before I get to ask them. I also want to say too, as someone who comes in and out of all of these places and these movements, it is really as a consequence of the work that you're making and the images that you're making that we who are not there when you are there really are getting to understand that. And very early on in 2015, I was talking to a friend of mine who was on the street photographer. She was in Baltimore and was one of the only photographers that was allowed to be on the ground with the activists because they were responding to the way the media was portraying their movement. And so between 2015 and where we are 5 years, it really is remarkable and important that all of you are there because the notion that Black people protesting the murder of their brothers and sisters could be described as thuggery, for instance, when for us, it's all about survival. That's where we were 5 years ago, and where we are now is quite different. And I want to talk about a little bit about the sort of dissemination of your photographs. Most of you are on social media. Instagram for photography and artists seems to be the vehicle of choice. And Marley, you mentioned it a little bit too, because you were talking about the feedback that you get from people. Mm-hmm. So given that you've put it out there in the world in that way, what are you all getting back from the audience that is consuming it? What are they saying?
For me, with my audience, I haven't really, thank God, like on my platform, I haven't had a lot of negative, especially with the Confederate flag. I was a little worried about that one for real. But like, I haven't really had a lot of negative feedback, honestly, other than the Christopher Columbus pictures that I tweeted on Twitter. That was about it. But in general, it's been a lot of, like, for me, the same things that we're saying about each other's photos within each other. Like, everybody's just feeling like what a time to be alive, like to see these like photos captured during this moment. Like, for some people, it's like, wow, like this is what's going on. This is what's happening. So I'm grateful that I haven't had that negative feedback. Honestly, I know one day it'll probably come, but even if it does, it's my story. I hold my story sacred to me, so nobody can tell our stories like we can. And I feel like with that in general, I appreciate people like taking our photos and using it as a moment to be able to bear witness with us of what we're seeing, and also support us in a way to where like help push our stories out as well. Because like I said, for Black photographers, it's hard for our stories to be told. Like it's hard for our stories to get out there, even in photography it can be oppressing at times. Like, it's just the reality of it. So to bear witness to all of this and still be, like, as they said, I'm very honored to be a part of this, honestly, because it's telling our story. It's, Second Street is really giving us that opportunity in that space for us to tell our stories and how we see it.
Mm-hmm. Same here. Like, I've actually only received pretty much positive feedback from the images that I've shared. And what I think has been really interesting for me is some of the people that have made comments or either shared my work or expressed their excitement or gratitude for my work. It's like people that I would not have thought would have commented. I think that's probably been the biggest thing for me, is just hearing people, anybody can like a photo, but those people that actually reach out to you in your story and say something to you, or actually add a comment to your photo, and you look at those people and you're like, man, I would have never thought you would have said this. I would never thought that this is your stance on it. I think that's been probably the most eye-opening thing for me, is people that I kind of least expected to have a stance or be in support, have been in support. I don't know if anyone else has felt that, but I've definitely had some surprising people that have offered some of their support and gratitude.
Yeah, same for me, Derrick. I mean, growing up in Hanover County, living in Ashland, you know, this is thought of as one of the most racist places in Virginia sometimes. And people who I grew up with, went to high school with, it's like, what, you're actually in support of this? It's really shocking. But also, too, the opposite of that, I also really got to see where certain people stood with that. And I'm actually thankful for it, because I don't want those type of people around me. I don't want you on my feed. If you have an issue with my work and the art that I'm producing out, you know, the way I look at it, it's not a problem with me. It's a problem with you. You need to look inside of your soul and your heart and figure out what it is that's eating you inside and why this makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's real.
What about you, Keith?
Yeah, I think I've been getting a lot of love, a lot of like positivity around my work, like through the summer into the fall. And since I'm also distributing candles, you know, like people are sending me images of what they do with the candles. And so like that, I think that kind of reciprocation of like sending my work out and then like people again, like having that agency and making their own images with these things has been really beautiful. And like kids especially like really enjoy like the imagination that goes into like the wax objects. I feel like the sometimes with the negativity, a lot of times, because I have kind of a small platform, I feel like it's mostly more left leaning, you know, so like I don't have a lot of like radical to the right people like aware of my work. But since I have these images of Lincoln too, I feel like oftentimes there are debates about like why is Lincoln included with all these racists and stuff like that. And so like that's definitely a conversation that I often get into, like parsing out and debating with people.
Mm-hmm. But are people responding because I think this is one of the sort of interesting things about when you're creating these kinds of images that are within that crease of narrative, authenticity, activism, is that the kind of ownership, you know, when you're in the fine art space, you don't get that immediate feedback and response in the ways that you're getting as a consequence of using the social media as a space. So in some ways, it gives you as an artist the ability to understand what your audiences, whatever they are speaking to you. But it also, in very real ways, I think, which is what I find so fascinating about it, is the ways in which you're reaching so many more people through those platforms than you would normally have had even in this exchange at Second Street, right? So if I were going to ask all of you, how do you gauge the tenor of America based on that kind of response, right? You're saying there's a lot of love there, but you're putting out these images. Some of them are really touching some very hot buttons. If you were going to say, the information that I'm receiving, the feedback that I would give you based on that information says America is where? Where is America right now? And can you even do that based on that information?
Yes, loaded question.
Yeah, it is loaded. But I would say this: the one thing that I've noticed a lot when I post my photos is, and I try not to like even stop it, but there are folks that, and I know some of them who are like very, very consistent. Every time I post a photo, they say something. They kind of like just say something to bait everybody, and then you react to it, and then an argument ensues. They do it all the time, and I understand. I see them, but I try not to like take them off. I'm like, yeah, you express whatever you want to express, and that just that argument starts. That is something that I see a lot in some of the photos that I post, and that tells me a little bit of what's where we are as a country right now, how divided we are to a certain degree. And to me, someone that moved here from Africa, my idea of America, I must say, was totally different before coming to America. I had this idea of everything I knew about America was what I saw in the movies, and the good movies that I say. So coming to America and then seeing all of this, I was like, oh God, what's going on here? My first experience, or my first personal experience of racism was so subtle that I didn't even have a name for it. It took me years for me to be able to like call it out and be like, oh, that's what that is called. But it's crazy now that the way where we are right now, people actually just come out and just say it straight to your face and stuff. And that's what I'm seeing in some of the comments I'm getting on some of the photos that I post. People engage, someone say, I'll give you an example. Say I post a photo of, say, protesters, with their Black Lives Matter, say, banners or whatever, and somebody will comment, yay, thank you very much for going out there. Thank you very much for posting this. We love what you're doing. Keep doing it. And then, someone would just come and say something like, where are the Trump supporters? Where's the Trump flag or something? Just something to get the people going. Just knowing that the people commenting on the photos are positive. This same guy just comes in and says the same thing, and then it just keeps just like takes the people off. But to me, the point I'm trying to make is it's just indicative of what's where the country is right now. Where we all are right now, and how divided we are, and how it's either this way or that way. I know a lot of us are like I know for sure, me for myself, speaking for myself, I want to see a better place. I want to see, a country where we all come together and try to have a dialogue and try to make a beautiful place, a better place for us and, our kids and, and everybody. But it's unfortunate that what I see now is it's not really people coming to want to talk, but coming to say this is my way. And if you're not going with mine, you can go, do something to yourself, whatever. It's just it's that steep now, and the divide is just clear, and people are not willing to compromise at all. And it's quite unfortunate to see that. And some of this works that we're putting out there brings out all of that in people and makes me see that the reaction. That's kind of the reactions I get and stuff, and that's my way of like that has helped me to gauge what the way the country is, or where where people are, where the country is going, unfortunately. And I'm afraid it's not good. It's not we're not heading the right direction at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, what I feel from just my experiences, we just got a long way to go still. Even in all the events from this summer, I mean, there were a lot of them. So we were at these these protests, and we were taking photos and we were sharing photos, and we had support, and we had people that this was on the forefront of their mind. I'll say non-Black people. But now that we're not in that, it's not the same energy at all. And what I find is with this, being a Black person, and I mentioned this before, this is our life. So we are living in this, this moment. We don't have that, I guess, we don't have the ability to just step out or step away. I mean, at any moment we could not make it home tomorrow or tonight or whatever. But other people, non-Black, have that luxury to, be heightened by, seeing that video of George Floyd, but sort of, and being very supportive of, the fight, but being able to easily back off and not really impact their day-to-day lives. So that's what I'm kind of seeing. And then of course, as he was mentioning with the election, and it's very clear to see the country's very divided right now. So, you know, and you can see that with our photos. You know, again, I'm kind of like Sandy. My platform is a little, you know, kind of small, I would say, and probably the majority of the people that follow me are people that know me, or a lot of people know me. So they, in many cases, share the same views. So that's probably why I'm seeing a lot of the positive feedback. However, but you know, I'm out there, and I appreciate other people's work, and I'm reviewing their work and looking at their work, and I'm watching the other comments, and you can clearly see that, you know, it's very divided right now.
Yeah. It's the same thing to say that I appreciate all the support I get on in my world, but you know, we were out there because we saw Ahmaud killed. Like we know Breonna was killed. We know George was killed. You know, it's like we're out there because of the state of the country and it's in, because those statues are still up. So it's really hard to gauge where the country is at, because we weren't out there celebrating.
Right. Ty, what about you? Because Richmond is still hot, so
Very. Yeah, it's
you know,
very.
there's all kinds of things.
Yep, it's very split, and I mean, for me, it's just crazy to think that more importance is placed on these statues that represent racism and hate. More emphasis is put on that than it is of Black lives. There's people who'd rather see those statues remain than to see that Black creatives and other Black lives don't have to worry about police brutality again. Every day, just driving through Monument Avenue, every time you go down there, it almost just feels like something is going to explode any moment now. Where the Lee statue is, it's actually been changed to, unfortunately, somebody else who was murdered, Marcus Davis Peters. It's called Marcus Davis Peters Circle. 24/7, there's people out there protesting, showing their expressions. But yes, it is split down the way. And a lot of that is really because of the administration that we have in the White House right now. He's created this boldness to where he can just come out and say anything he wants to say. And he thinks that there's no type of consequences to it. And his followers feel the same way. And it's utter ridiculousness. And we do have a lot of work that we need to do. But I do appreciate the works of my colleagues that are here and other creatives that are telling that story and getting that out there.
You know, what you just piggyback on what you said about Richmond, the photographers that I know in Richmond, a lot of them actually that want to do what we're doing right now. They really want to show some of the works they've done. Black photographers, you know, whites, young, you know, really young photographers who have been out there documenting, but Richmond is so divided right now that they can't do this. Mm-hmm. Now they're staging an exhibition, but guess where? In Norfolk.
Norfolk, yeah.
They're moving it to Norfolk because they cannot show it in Richmond. That's to give you an idea of how crazy things are. It's quite unfortunate because the idea of showing this, it's not to give power to any side, but just to tell the story, to let, you know, coming back, you know, walking through and seeing the photos, you take, sorry about that, guys. But coming back, looking at those photos, you get to ask yourself, like, wow, what have we done? Have we been able to push for change, or have we made things worse? These photos would help, get you to, sit back and just reflect a little bit. There's a lot to tell in the story. There's a lot to show in these things, and having people look back and be like, wow, we actually did that. Oh God, I can't believe we did that. That's not what I stand for. I don't know. It depends on where you're looking at it from. But it's very important that you give room to, folks to, folks who are creating something, who are trying to tell the story, to be able to tell the story. Art is not, yeah, I know art is, it's kind of like tricky to like separate art from politics. And I know, but making it so difficult for some of those folks to be able to tell their story, like what is happening in Richmond right now, is quite unfortunate. And that is, to me, it's kind of like indicative of what's happening in the country right now.
Yeah. Well, art has always been political. So, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation. I think that our community is, all our communities is enriched as a consequence of your work. Thank you for revealing this movement to those of us who aren't on the ground and aren't there participating. I think the work has done an amazing service to letting people from all over understand what does it mean when you say that there is a movement to pull down monuments, that Black Lives Matter, that white supremacy exists, and that there are people who are willing to put themselves on the line to change those things. So I applaud all of you and thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea, for
Thank you.
Welcome.
the conversation.
Thank you for having me a part of this too, Andrea, and you did amazing.
Yeah,
Thank
Andrea, you killed it as usual.
Well, you all killed it. I mean, I have all these questions that are all about, aesthetics and blah, 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 but you're answering them without me even asking them. So
Andrea, you
I'm
should
really
have gone like
prepared to go, "Thank you."
this. You should have gone like this. Ézé, I'll get it. But I'm glad it all went well. Like I said, I'm really honored to be showing and to be amongst you very talented individuals, and I couldn't have asked for a better group of artists and activists and and thinkers. This is cool. Thank you very much, guys.
I agree.
All right.
And thanks to Krista and Megan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Andrea, thank you so very much, guys.
Thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Douglas, for moderating tonight. That was fantastic. And thank you to our panelists for being part of this. It was so great to have you all here and have listened to your great conversation. And so please, if you're watching the talk, please come by and see the show in person. It will be on view until November 14th. And I included a link in the chat where you can schedule an appointment time. Free appointment time to come in and see the show safely and socially distanced. Either do it online or call the gallery to make an appointment. So thank you again to everyone and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Night.
Yeah.